So first off, you're probably wondering, can you make this yourself? And yes, you can. So this design comes from JB777 or JBB_777. And this is something that you can get off rebrickable.com. So I'll link it down in the description. It's free instructions, doesn't cost anything. And this is indeed a modification of the 2022 ATTE Lego set. You will need extra parts. You will need power functions or powered up motors, but this is something you can do yourself. As you can see from the designer, this actually functions exactly like an ATTE from either the Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. It has the exact movement and it really brings the set alive. So when I saw this, I absolutely had to try it for myself, and I was met with mixed results. First off, it's incredibly gracious of the designer to give these instructions away for free. So I'm going to leave his Instagram handle down in the description so you guys can follow him if you want to donate. This is just incredibly generous of a designer. Now, unless you have all the parts on hand, you will need to put some orders into Bricklink. So I had about half the parts in my collection, half I had to order. And so it wasn't that many. It cost about $100 for everything here, including the power functions motor. If you exclude the motor, it's about $50 of parts. And then of course, you will need the actual 75337 ATTE walker. Now, if you're like me and trying to build this motorized ATTE, you're probably going to need the set itself. If you don't already have one, guess what? I'm giving away this exact brand new sealed Lego Star Wars ATTE on my next Whatnot stream. So this Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm also going to be giving away 10 ARC 170 micro sets from 2014. So these are pretty hard to get your hands on. 10 of these plus the ATTE, all given away for free, no strings attached during my Whatnot stream. So if you're new to Whatnot, or maybe you've heard about it, it's a live stream selling app that you can download with the link down in the description. And when you do so, you'll get a $15 credit that you can use towards my stream or someone else's on the platform. And if you join my stream, well, I'm going to be auctioning off my own personal Lego Star Wars minifigure collection, over 200 minifigures this time, which is a little sad to say, but I don't need all those clone troopers. I think I purchased a little too many, but not only will it be clones, there'll be plenty of other Lego Star Wars minifigures from across the multitude of trilogies, so this is something you're absolutely not going to want to miss out on. There'll literally be a little something for everyone. So make sure you join me this Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will see you guys there. Thanks to Whatnot for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to motorizing this ATTE. Now, if you're going to attempt this modification and utilize the ATTE that you already have built, you will have to completely tear it apart piece by piece. You can't just use sections of it. It does have to fully come apart and be redesigned into this modification. So if you're opening up a brand new version like I have here on the screen, you'll open up all the bags, pour out all the parts like the good old days of Lego Star Wars sets pre-2010s. Maybe I'm the only one that enjoyed actually like finding the Lego pieces out of piles upon piles of bricks. Yeah, that probably is just me. Anyhow, to the modification, this is extremely impressive engineering and design work from JB777. As you can see here, this function kind of just is outside of my field of knowledge, and I'm sure it is for you as well. It is incredible that this functions at the scale it's at. But it wasn't all smooth sailing as I was putting this modification together. First off, I ran into this gearing issue where I was bending Technic pieces and I knew something was wrong mid-build, and all I had to do was flip this one little tiny Technic piece. Just one mistake like that can almost ruin the entire model. This is something for an extreme enthusiast, not even the advanced enthusiast, just someone who knows Technic really well is the person I would recommend building this, because if you absolutely hate Technic builds or you just cannot touch it, this is your worst nightmare. For me personally, I've always enjoyed building Lego Technic sets. Maybe that's a hot take, it probably is. But overall, I thought the build flow was pretty good on this set. You will need to know what you're doing. You have to pay extreme attention to the instructions to make sure you have the axles aligned correctly, that you're connecting things in the right way, that you didn't make a mistake, which is very easy with this modification to do. And spoiler alert, I did make a mistake. In fact, I made multiple mistakes, and we'll go through that here in a minute. Now, after you're finished with this build, you will have quite a few spare parts. Remember, a lot of the interior guts are getting replaced with Technic pieces, hence so many extra pieces. You will still, however, have all the figures, including the battle droids, the clone troopers, and even the spider droid left over. Now, even with the ATTE turned off, with this modification not even functioning, it actually still makes the ATTE oddly more accurate looking, maybe because of how the legs are posed. It's pretty sweet, actually. And after a 4-hour build process, here's the final results. So immediately I notice a few glaring issues. First off, it wasn't nearly as fast as what it shows here on the designer's video, and then I could also hear some gear grinding, which is never a good sign. Now, while you're building the modification, the instructions clearly show that you need to line up all these different Technic axles in a very specific way, which I did adhere to. I thought I had it pretty much lined up as I was seeing on the instructions, but it was still off. And so I reached out to the designer, JB777. I asked him, hey, does this look off and all that? He said the front two legs are good, the mid legs are good. He said the back legs need to be adjusted. He also stressed that if it was tearing the gears like that some of the pieces may already be damaged and that I should look into that and see if I need to replace something, because if the gears are improperly aligned, the amount of stress that this model goes under for how it walks would literally tear the gears apart, which is kind of crazy to say. And when you start to explore the guts of this thing, it becomes clear why. You can see that it's utilizing some very questionable techniques that, while work, I've never seen implemented in any other design before, any official Lego set. A lot of what's going on here are illegal techniques, especially with how this one area of how the legs function and drop down. It's utilizing like a baby bottle piece and a special oval Technic piece that's sliding in between plates that are adhered to Technic lift arms, and it just got to be quite a lot. So after 4 hours of diagnosing, trying to figure out what the problem was, I realized maybe it's in the inside, that I'll have to take it all apart, and that's exactly what I did. I waited till the next day, gave myself a breather, and thought maybe this mid axle here wasn't aligned properly to have the two legs synchronized. Maybe it wasn't an individual leg, that it was just the two sections off, and that was what was causing the misalignment and friction problems that I was having. And so, as you can see here, I lined up the legs as best as I possibly could after tearing it apart, putting it all back together. This was not easy, by the way, and it matches exactly what I see in the instructions, except then I realized after I did this that the joints are off by a little bit. The inner gear system there was not properly like middle centered, if that makes any sense. It's very hard to explain this. I'm not a mechanical engineer, unfortunately. And after tinkering around with it again, we're at like hour 7 by this point, I thought I had done it. I was like, okay, these legs look synchronized. This looks like the video. Let's put the model back together. Let's get it back to its final form, and it should work at this point. I thought I had cracked the code. I had done it, that this was the moment, and here's what happened. And so if you can't already tell, I had made the problem even worse. The legs were even more out of sync. I think it's the mid legs at this point that are causing the issues. It's hard to tell. And you can see that gears and pieces are literally falling out from the friction. So I diagnosed the problems again, and it turns out that the mid legs were indeed having issues. They weren't properly aligned with the gear teeth that moved the legs up and down. So I fixed that, took it apart, put it back together. And as you can see here, even after I fixed the gear teeth, it was still having wobbly issues, that it still wasn't working quite right. By this point, I was already on the 3rd day of this project, and it just got worse and worse. After taking it apart and putting it back together 3 times, I still couldn't get it working. Now, Rebrickable.com has a comment section of people who download designs and build them, will share their thoughts, and I looked on the site and it doesn't seem that anybody else has tried to attempt this modification. So basically, I was the beta tester, the first person, at least to my knowledge, outside of the designer to actually attempt making this. And unfortunately, this is the type of side effects that come with being first. I really wanted this to work out. And now that it's its 3rd day that I've been working on this project, well, I'm going to have to give up on this one. Honestly, I came to the point where it felt like it was 8th grade math and I couldn't figure out the equation. You know what I'm talking about. If you've been there, you know that feeling. You feel like the world has crushed you. And that's where I got to the point where this ATTE, and I was like, look, as much as I want to keep working on this, as much as I want to make it work, the amount of time that's going to be required to take it apart again, to continue diagnosing the problems, would be better spent if I was finishing my Geonosis finale, and that's what I should be doing. I wanted to go into this video, show you guys, hey, look at this free upgrade that you can do to your ATTE, make it motorized, something I've personally always wanted ever since LEGO did that 2007 AT-AT that's walking across. I was like, why can't we do that for the ATTE? And many designers have done it before, but they are complex. They do usually get bigger. And JB777 was able to downscale this type of motorization technique into the actual playset of the ATTE that's still available. And I was like, this is it. This is what I've been wanting. It's just so frustrating that it didn't work out. I mean, you guys saw, I tinkered around with this thing for hours. I think I spent 7 hours after the 4-hour build process diagnosing, trying to figure out what was wrong, tearing it literally apart, putting it all back together, tearing it apart again, putting it back together, and it still doesn't work. Now, I did talk to the designer, JB777. He's on Instagram, and you know, full disclaimer, no hate to the designer. First off, these are free instructions. There should be no hate that the fact that I wasn't able to make this work doesn't mean that you can't, nor that if you do try this design, that you should be mad at the designer because it was free. It didn't cost anything. He took his time out and made the instructions. It really just comes down to the fact that I think this design is just too complex for the average builder or even the advanced enthusiast builder to build something like this and get it done right. I tried my best adhering to the instructions, getting those lineups of the Technic axles, but at least with the first version of the instructions, I wasn't able to make this work. Now, I think with you guys, the community involvement, and JB working on maybe a second iteration of the instructions, which by the way, I wouldn't mind if he charges a couple of dollars for the instructions, if it means updating this to better understand or maybe flesh out some of these techniques, because there really is a lot of illegal techniques being utilized here that are really pushing the boundaries of what LEGO pieces should and shouldn't be doing, and some of it is questionable within this design. And I mean, you guys saw it kind of bends parts around if you're not careful. It's a very fragile design. It will work, as JB777 has proven to be, but you have to be extremely precise. You have to know exactly what you're doing. And I thought I knew what I was doing going into this. I thought tearing it apart and fixing one little flaw would fix everything, and that just wasn't the case. So in its current state, obviously I can't recommend that any of you go out and try this design. I wasn't able to make it work, but if you have all the parts on hand, you have a lot of time to spend on your weekends or something like that, then it might be worth experimenting, seeing if you can make the design work. Maybe you can help improve the instructions. I think that's where I could see this go from here. You know, I'm hoping this video brings attention to this design because it really is incredible. I would just like to see it fleshed out, obviously. I'll definitely be curious to see what you guys have to say down in the comments below. Of course, I want to thank Whatnot for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have a great, wonderful day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.